Hello. How are you? Oh shit. Oh boy, what a beautiful day. Some good drama. Trump got, I guess you could say, cucked tonight. This one Michigan county was gonna hold up the results. So Trump was celebrating because these Republicans were holding up the results in a county so they couldn't be certified and give Biden the win. But apparently they got like overturned like right after Trump went on like a mini victory tour. So that was pretty nice for tonight. But I saw this video by Ben Shapiro titled "The Most Ridiculous Children's Book Ever Written." And whenever Ben Shapiro starts watching or starts talking about cultural issues like this, and I know there's the dress controversy, because him and Candace Owens went viral because they cried about Harry Styles wearing the dress or whatever, and how that's an attack on masculinity. But this is really funny as well. This is a book written by what was that one book called? It was that anti-racist book, something about white privilege, and Ben Shapiro got really mad over it. Oh, what was that book called? I totally forget. Do you guys remember that one book? Oh my God, it was such a big story. I just didn't care enough about it, so I forgot the name of it. But this is sort of like that.
We are going to be reviewing a
Oh,
already today. We are going to be reviewing a children's book by noted cult leader and fascist Ibram X. Kendi. I say that he's a cult leader because he actually says things like, if you don't listen to me and repeat what I say, then you are a racist, and you can only be cleansed of your racism by paying me $20,000 to do a diversity session about how you're a racist. And also,
a cult leader and a fascist. So everything conservatives don't like is fascism now. They flipped it.
say he's a fascist because he has literally proposed in writing that there be a federal Department of Anti-Racism to strike down, I kid you not, any law that has a disparate impact, meaning that if any group does worse under a law than any other group, then the law can be struck down by the Department of Anti-Racism.
Asking for a Department of Anti-Racism is actually the definition of fascism. I don't know if you know that, but just look it up.
Which is called every single law ever in the history of humanity, because you can draw a line down the middle of a room without regard to race, age, or anything, and you will end up with disparate impact on the people on either side of the line.
Yep,
Okay, so
every law
the
is
guy
equal.
is just a charlatan, he is a fraud, and he is highly sought after for
He's a
diversity-seeking
fraud.
initiatives at various corporations seeking to avoid
I
liability.
actually don't like all of the diversity training initiatives at corporations. I don't think they work well at all. If you're going to divert time, away to focus on some type of racial sensitivity training, I think having each of your employees take an hour-long educational session on sociology would help a lot more than racial sensitivity training. I think it's a cheap cop-out for corporations, so they can actually, not change anything real about the function of their country, or not their country, of their company, to make their companies less racist.
Okay, so he wrote a children's book, like a book for kids, so he can indoctrinate small babies in this book. So it's called Anti-Racist
He's so
Baby.
mad.
Looks excellent. Here we go. Okay, so the book begins with dedications. So Ibram Kendi writes like a nice dedication, presumably to his kid, Imani. And then the illustrator writes this: to all the young people whose own imaginations are unbound by the imaginations of state violence and white supremacy, and the power we hold to build a world that is anti-racist, I believe in us. Yes, all your hope lies in the ability of a small child who has not yet been indoctrinated into the institutions of evil, but who unfortunately has no ability to wipe their own ass.
Ben Shapiro unironically thinks 3-year-olds are going to be reading this. I think he thinks 3-year-olds can read.
Anti-racist baby is bred, not born.
That's a woke
So
statement.
how are we going to indoctrinate your child today? Because your child is going to be bred. Babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There is no neutrality. What if you're just not racist? Well, according to Ibram Kendi, seriously, he actually believes that if you say that you're not racist and you don't do anything racist, you're actually still racist because you're not anti-racist. Anti-racist means that you believe that every institution that has a disparate impact needs to be torn to the ground. This is actual theory.
No, it's just if you are looking at society today and you don't see the repercussions of systemic racism and implicit and explicit bias, then you're complicit in a system of racism. I'm not for all this woke, all the woke bullshit. I don't think they get the point across well, but yeah, this illustration is horrifying. I agree.
So babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. So either you indoctrinate them
Benny
to believe
boy.
what Ibram Kendi believes, or you are, right, he eliminated one of those options now. If you don't do what if you're not anti-racist, like Ibram Kendi, that means your baby's a racist. Take these 9 steps to make equity a reality. Ooh, I'm so excited. 1, open your eyes to all skin colors. Anti-racist baby learns all the colors, not because race is true. If you claim to be colorblind, you deny what's right in front of you. Okay, so that is so self-refuting. I mean, like, completely self-refuting.
God, he's so
Right, he
stupid.
says
It's not funny
that
how dumb he
you
is.
have to learn everybody's color because race is not true. But if race is not true, why would you bother to learn everybody's color? Like, who cares?
He
right?
can't differentiate between, hating somebody or discriminating against somebody because of their race. He can't differentiate that from, being able to see someone's individual experience as a result of their race, in America. He's honestly, is he dumb or is he dishonest? That's the big question here. That's the big question with a lot of these people. Because it's pretty obvious. The book is saying, don't hate people because they're black, but also don't be colorblind, because then you are blind to those experiences, the experience of being black in America and what comes with that. I mean, is that a hard concept to understand? Because I know a lot of 14-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds that can get concepts like this. But Ben Shapiro is so smug in his denial of, fact and simple concept.
Right? Either you're a racial essentialist, in which case you should know everybody's color because there are racial differences that are essential, which is racist, or you should learn everybody's racial color for no reason. He says, if you claim to be colorblind, you deny what's right in front of you. No, what you deny is Ibram Kendi's premise, which is that you are, in fact, a racist unless Ibram Kendi says that you are otherwise, deems you otherwise. 2, use your words to talk about race. No one will see racism if we only stay silent. If we don't name racism, it won't stop being so violent. Yes, what we need is 2-year-olds deeming things racist. That sounds great.
This isn't literally for 2-year-olds. Don't you get the idea of what the author is trying to do?
As a person with small children, what I need is my children running around on the streets calling things racist when they don't literally know how to wipe their own asses. Makes perfect sense to me.
You don't know how to do that.
No one will see racism.
And you get paid a lot of money for what you say.
Silent. I'm confused just because I feel like we will still see racism. We just won't be speaking about it. Now, you want to make the case that we should speak out against racism. That sounds good. I'm all for it. But the problem is, again, he defines racism as anything Ibram Kendi doesn't like. Okay. 3, point at policies as the problem, not people. There we go. There we go. See, here you are now removing the definition of racism. You're teaching kids that you don't actually have to be racist in order to be racist. Right? Instead,
yes, you don't have to be explicitly racist to push forward and propel a racist system.
Kid,
it's
you're
not
teaching
a hard
kids
concept.
they have to point out racism, but in order for them to point out racism, they don't have to spot a racist or racist intent. All they have to do is find something they don't like and call it racist. He says, some people get more while others get less because policies don't always grant equal access.
Yeah, so this net right here is catching those two butterflies, but not the ones outside the net.
There is a person who's catching butterflies with the net, and one butterfly is not caught. This means that this person is racist against this particular type.
No, it means the system isn't working.
Now, we have no idea why this person is catching that particular type of butterfly. Maybe they need to do research on that type.
No, it's not.
It's a butterfly, by the way, not a human. Okay, number 1. Number 2,
he can't be this
maybe
stupid.
It's because those butterflies are easier to catch, and this person catches butterflies for a living. Maybe the
easier
person
to catch.
is evil and really, really hates blue butterflies. We don't know. But we can simply assume that because there is a disparity, discrimination has taken place. This is what we're teaching small children.
That's not what
because everything is incredibly stupid.
That's not what it's saying at all.
4, shout. There's nothing wrong with the people. Even though all races are not treated the same, we are all human, anti-racist baby can proclaim. So the point here, right, and the subtle point here.
Here's an ad.
Hey, Phil.
The subtle point here is that you are only a racist if you say the N-word. Racism actually isn't real in America, and racism never was real in America.
So,
it was just a misunderstanding.
This is what Ibram Kendi has said in his writing for adults, which is also written like it is for children because only idiots would believe it. and children are basically small adults who are idiots. When he says there's nothing wrong with the people, what
Ben
he means
Shapiro
is
is
if
so
there's any
smart.
disparity in outcome, you cannot attribute that to the individual decisions of the people, right? You have to attribute it to the policies. So if you have one person who makes a bunch of bad decisions,
If you have 30% of black people starting off in poverty versus 8% of white people starting off in poverty, maybe that might be one of the reasons why black people are less successful than white people and have worse outcomes.
and ends up impoverished, or somebody robs a bank and goes to jail, it's not because the person made a bad decision to rob a bank and then ended up in jail.
Hey, okay, so using the crime example, do you ever see a rich person robbing a bank? Do you ever see a rich person robbing a Turkey Hill? Why don't rich people commit crime? Why would you commit more crime if you start off in poverty? Maybe there's a system at play there that makes individuals, grow up in an environment that makes them act a certain way. It's
There's nothing
not
wrong with
rocket
the person,
science.
you see. It was the policies that drove him to do that.
Oh, so
Right,
Ben's gonna keep on easing into it. There's obviously something wrong with black people.
This is what we are supposed
That's what
to
he's
be
gonna
teaching
say.
children, which, by the way, is a great message for kids. I think the best message for kids who lack a sense of personal responsibility in the first place and are really selfish little creatures. Kids are innocent, but they are not good. Anybody who's ever had a kid can tell you this, right? Kids can be horrific. Kids can be cruel to one another. Kids can be violent and brutal. If a 4-year-old had the body of a 40-year-old, the world would be over, right? 4-year-olds just walk around hitting each other and screaming and pulling things down and wrecking things. Kids are wonderful. I have 3 of them, okay? They're wonderful. They're the joys of my life. They are not good. They're innocent. Okay, you have to teach them to be good. That's what civilization is for. Teaching a child that individual action does not matter, right? That there's nothing wrong with the people, meaning there's nothing wrong with your individual choice, no matter what your choice is.
No one ever says individual decision making doesn't matter. We always encourage better decision making, but it doesn't matter when there's systems at place that don't allow a huge group of people to, move forward. Like, what's that one quote? Like, you can tell one person about individual decision making, but when 50% of a total group of people are all experiencing the same outcomes, then there's an issue with the system.
It should result in the same outcome. Is it literally a way to bring up sociopathic children?
Yeah, that's the way to bring up sociopathic children. This is the way.
It should result in the same outcome. Is it literally a way to bring up sociopathic
Saying
children?
there should be somewhat of a more equal outcome is how you bring up
5.
sociopathic children.
Celebrate all our differences. Anti-racist baby doesn't see certain groups as better or worse. Anti-racist baby loves a world that's truly diverse.
Whatever Ben is about to say, it's bullshit because he would genocide all the Palestinian people in a second.
Okay, so is he now claiming that we should see people as individuals? No, that's silly. Of course not. What he means is that no matter what choices anybody makes, we are not allowed to say choices are better or worse. He doesn't mean that we should see every individual without regard to skin color. We should see every individual based on content of character. He originally disowned that in principle number 1, as you will recall. No, what he's actually saying is that individual choice literally should never be discriminated
He
against.
didn't say that at all.
Okay, now, here's my deal. I do discriminate based on individual choice, not based on skin color, not based on a mutable characteristic, based on individual choice. If you choose to eat nails, that is a worse choice than not choosing to eat nails. Okay, I discriminate based on that choice, as would any sentient human being. But he is saying that you shouldn't do that, right? You should, every choice is equally good. And only cultural racism is what causes you to think that some choices are better than others. If some people choose to eat
let's
nails,
see what he says.
that's just a different culture, right? 6.
If people choose to eat nails, that's simply a different culture. Okay, how deep is he going to go with this? How far is the mask going to completely come
Knock
off
down
here?
the stack of cultural blocks. Anti-racist baby appreciates how groups speak, dance, and create as they choose. Anti-racist baby welcomes all groups voicing their unique views. Okay, well, I just have a question. Are there any limits on this behavior? Right? Because
Limits?
you're supposed to knock down the stack of cultural blocks, which means that presumably every cultural behavior is a manifestation
Oh
of
no,
system
cultural behavior. Here we go. Black people are wrong. There's something wrong with black people. He's about to do it.
power. Are there any? But there are no
He
bad
eased
choices,
into it
right?
slowly.
This is what we're learning here. Anti-racist baby appreciates how groups speak, dance, and create. How about what if they're like burning down cities?
Oh, yep. All the black people like burning down cities because the culture's messed up. All the black people just like burning down the cities. Whoops. Sorry.
What if they're like riots in the streets? What if people are hitting each other with baseball bats? Like, are we supposed to
They're just
appreciate that as
violent.
just sort of a cultural difference?
Oh,
Are we
cultural
supposed to
difference.
just think that
Yeah.
if you make bad decisions, that's just cultural difference? And it's not a matter of unique viewpoint, right? Unless
Maybe if the black people after slavery just made better decisions, they wouldn't be where they are right now.
includes a non-harm principle here. This is a bad principle. 7, confess when being written.
Jesus.
Confess, baby. Small baby.
he's scary.
Confess your sins.
He moves like a wooden like Pinocchio. He moves like a wooden puppet.
Teach your 2-year-old
Is that anti-Semitic in some way? I don't even know.
confess to being racist. Okay, I have a 4-year-old. I can't even get my 4-year-old to confess that he drew on the counter with a Sharpie.
Imagine being Ben Shapiro's kid.
Are you kidding me?
Jesus.
Yeah, confess. Anybody who actually teaches this crap to their kids should be brought up on charges of child abuse. Seriously. 7, confess when being racist.
Okay.
Nothing disrupts racism more than when we confess the racist ideas we sometimes express. Okay, but again, he is defining racist as anything he doesn't like. So this is where the cult leader part comes in. He gets to determine if something is racist.
No.
If you refuse to confess your racism along those lines, this is because you are a racist and you must confess, and give Ibram Kendi $20,000 for a diversity training session. 8, grow to be an anti-racist. Anti-racist baby is always learning, changing, and growing. Anti-racist baby stays curious about all people and isn't all-knowing. Well, unless anti-racist baby grows up to be Ibram Kendi, then he knows everything. And he gets to change the standards, just willy-nilly.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro showed a clear misunderstanding of literally everything in this book. I'm not for all the super woke training, like I said, the diversity training at the corporate level or anything. But, like, obviously, he's being very uncharitable, and we know what Ben Shapiro does already. It's all black culture. You know, there's something wrong with the culture, something wrong with just, you know, black people. They're just a little bit crazy. The systems have no play into how they act. Environments don't either. I remember when Joe Rogan pressed Ben Shapiro really hard on systemic racism, and Ben Shapiro had to fall back so far. Joe Rogan pounded him into dust. Like, okay, so if black people are acting a certain way, it's a product of their environment, right? Okay, fine. But, like, okay, then Ben Shapiro says, no, it's their culture. And then, you know, you just say, well, culture comes from environment as well. Unless if you think black people are wrong, you know, there's something wrong with black people that makes them have a bad culture. And Ben Shapiro had to surrender the point because he couldn't completely come out as a white nationalist. He had to surrender it, but, you know, he keeps doing this over and over again. So that leads me to believe that he knows he's completely wrong about all of these evaluations, but he continues to do it because he's a grifter who cares about his bottom line and who cares about, you know, portraying the message his billionaire sugar daddies pay him to give to people.
Random, depending on what he deems racist that day. What a wonderful book. What a wonderful book. 9, believe we shall overcome racism. But wait a second. I've been told that we can never overcome racism. Seriously, there's no ability to overcome racism. You can never fully do the work, is what Ibram Kendi says. We can only pursue the utopian goal. There's no point where utopia actually manifests. It doesn't happen. Because, after all, we have to continue seeing each other as groups, and we have to create laws in which the outcome is the same for everybody, which is...
Progress doesn't stop. And passing laws to make things more equal doesn't mean you have equal outcomes for everybody. It means people should start off with a more even playing field. Not have black people, again, 30% start off in poverty versus 8% of white people starting off in poverty. Then you add in the low education that black people receive. Black kids are much more likely to grow up in areas that have lead in the water, which leads to mental disabilities, which leads to acting out, which leads to violence.
Never going to happen, ever. So you actually can never overcome racism because, again, he defines racism as whatever he doesn't... I assume Ibram Kendi will always have things he doesn't like.
And the guy writing the book, Ben keeps on saying, like, okay, he's defining racism as everything he doesn't like. This guy's saying a bunch of general concepts about, like, how to be anti-racist. He's not saying anything he likes or doesn't like. So Ben Shapiro, like, that's an instant... I mean, there must be scarecrows around because that's a big straw man.
The definition will continue changing forever. But believe we can overcome. Anti-racist baby is filled with the power to transcend, my friend, and doesn't judge a book by its cover, but reads until the end. Oh, we did. We got through it, guys. We got through it together. What a beautiful bunch of absolutely garbage horse for children. Okay, we'll get to more of this in just 1 second. But first, I need to tell you about something incredible.
My God,
something
that music. Wow. Oh, it's his Raycon headphones.
So go
Raycon
check out
headphones.
Raycons right now.
Okay.
This is learning time. Dear parents and caregivers, it is critical we begin explicit conversations about race and racism with our children from a young age. Just as we teach our kids to be kind even before they fully understand what it means to be kind, we should teach our kids to be anti-racist even before they fully understand what it means to be anti-racist. Those are not the same thing. Teaching a kid to be kind means not hitting other kids, means being kind of nice. Teaching a kid to be anti-racist means that you have to indoctrinate them that all institutions in society are suffused with white supremacy and exploitation. I feel like that concept not only is a bullshit, but it's kind of hard to convey to a 2-year-old. Ask your child to describe the people in their friend group and yours. It is a
Well,
fallacy.
just because you don't understand it doesn't mean a kid can't. I know a lot of 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds that can't understand it. I don't think you should sit your kid down and be like, all right, here are the systemic issues facing black people in our country. But you should say to them the obvious things like, okay, treat everyone as equal. There's a different experience for certain people in our country. What's that one quote as well? If a black child is old enough to know racism exists and have it affect them, if a black child has to be told by their mother or father, you're going to be treated differently by the cops because you're black, then if they're old enough to learn about racism, then white children are old enough to learn about racism too.
See that children are colorblind. Help your child explicitly name the race of the people around them so they understand it is not insulting or harmful to do so. We want to normalize discussions about race and remove the stigma around these conversations. Okay, now I honestly don't have a problem with my kid saying there's a black guy, who cares? And that's true. Okay, it is important for children to name the race of the people around them so you can ask them what they think about those different races, why they think those things, and instruct them on how to understand racial difference.
Yeah, you need to be able to see race and also not judge people based on race. You can't be colorblind. Like, there's no way Ben doesn't understand these concepts.
Imagined construct, but one with very real consequences. You want to teach them this. You don't want to assume children are a blank slate. This leaves room for racists.
Don't assume children are a blank slate. Constantly make sure they're not a-holes and following under
to
systemic
shape their
bias.
understanding of racism instead. Okay, what if I don't feel like grilling my kid on what they think of various races because kids are dumb? What if instead I just say, right, there's a black guy. Right, there's a Latino guy. Right, there's a lady. Like, what's the problem with that? And then if my kid ever expressed something like, are women allowed to be X, Y, or Z? You say, of course women are allowed to be X, Y, or Z. Like, that's just normal parenting. But the idea is you're supposed to grill your kid for their racist internals, and then you're supposed to re-educate them, like, right away. Help children understand that racist policies are the problem, not people. Here's where we really go. You and your child can reflect on the racial makeup of your school or neighborhood. Are they truly diverse? Or do you live in a neighborhood or attend a school that is segregated? Help children understand that this is a result of racist policy, and talk about how this affects which schools may receive more resources.
Okay, that makes me think, like, how can you effectively portray this stuff to kids? Like, we all know Ben Shapiro's arguments here are bullshit, but how do you tell a kid about systemic racism and systemic bias? Like, how do you get that idea across to an 8, 9, or 10-year-old? Do you just say, like, because you don't want to say, like, that black person in your class has it harder, because then what if your kid goes in school the next day, because your kid's really young and doesn't know any better, and says in front of his classmates something like, oh, you're different, and you have it harder, or you're treated worse than me? Because kids are a hard subject. Like, should you just focus on molding them as they grow up, make sure they don't foster any hatred, shut all that shit down, and explain systemic stuff as it comes up as they grow up, and encourage, like, a more diverse, exposure to different cultures and different people? Yeah.
Resources over others. Okay, so I'm supposed to take my 6-year-old to school and be like, oh, that's because the administrators are racist, and historically there was redlining in the neighborhood. Or I could, assume that the kid is 6. Like, it's fine to talk about all this stuff. I'm just wondering why it's necessary to do it with a 4-year-old. Challenge the idea that all people are treated the same. It is common to share lessons like be kind to everyone with kids, but this reinforces the idea that racist acts are only carried out on an individual level and ignores that all people are not given the same access to necessary resources. Okay, so why should I not? I'm confused. I shouldn't be telling my kid to be kind to everybody? Should I be telling my kid to be an asshole to everybody? I guess I could, but I feel like that makes the world worse.
That's not what that says
although we
at
might
all.
teach kids anyone can do anything, we also have to teach them that racist barriers exist that stop us all from being truly free. Understanding this is the first step in helping to change it. Being kind does not mean that we avoid seeing race, but that we celebrate racial differences. Okay, that is a completely disjointed statement from the rest of that paragraph. But the idea that I can't teach my kid that anybody can do anything because I have to teach them that if they're a girl, if I teach my oldest daughter, actually there are structural barriers to your success. What do you think that teaches kids? What you're actually teaching kids is not to try.
That's the argument, like, okay, if you tell someone you're going to have it harder because you're black, that black person is going to be less likely to want to be successful. They're not going to work as hard, and they're going to use it as, like, a crutch, and their approach to life is going to foster nothing but losing and the opposite of success. If you say like, oh, you're black in America, you're going to face certain difficulties. Wow, it just makes black people shut down, right? That's his argument, basically. He brings it up all the time. It's like saying like, oh, wow, right after slavery, you want to help slaves get on their feet? You want reparations? What, you don't believe slaves can work hard enough on their own? You want to give them reparations once we set them free? Are you kidding me? It's sort of like that. Like, okay, I'm going to turn this on the head and use it against you. That's basically what he does with that argument.
That's what you're teaching kids. The reality is that in America, it's a free country. For the most part, anybody can do anything.
You want to make it more equal? Well, they can do it themselves. Like if you're running a 100-meter dash and all the white people get to start off at the 50-meter line and all the white people keep on winning and black people keep on losing, you just keep on yelling back at the black people that they're not fast enough.
That does not mean
wrong with them
that there are
and their
not barriers
decision-making.
in everybody's life. It does mean that we should work to alleviate those barriers. But I'm not supposed to teach kids that. I'm supposed to teach them the importance of the barriers, but not the importance of individual choice. This is bad parenting. Remember to talk to your kids about how people aren't just racist or anti-racist, but rather how their actions can be racist or anti-racist. So again, once more, it is not people that are the problem. It is merely the actions that are put upon them by society. Kids might understand how this is similar to when we say we don't consider them to be a bad kid when they do something wrong. But
People aren't the problem. There would be much better results for black people in America. And this is going to sound weird, but if the N-word was acceptable, but we had reparations, like there would be better outcomes for black Americans. The individuals really aren't the issue. Hatred from individuals doesn't matter unless if they are acting and like creating an environment or something that makes it worse for black Americans. But when it comes down to it, systems are at fault. Of course, hatred and people is going to lead to them crafting a system of racial discrimination and making that even worse. But I mean, you could even argue that them being open with their racism would be better because now it's implicit. It's harder to point out. It's harder to stop. It's harder to convince people there's a problem. Like all these white liberals who are like, wow, we really came so far. I don't even see color anymore. All these people can just, skate by because all the racists hide behind their policies and their, the war on drugs and all that stuff and law and order. Like I saw someone say like, I don't give a shit about LBJ because he said the N-word a lot. And I'm thinking like, okay, if he says the N-word, I know he's a shitty guy. He's a terrible guy. But what matters more in that equation? That he signed the Civil Rights Act or that he says the N-word? Like, I don't know. It's a little bit of a touchy concept, I guess.
we must acknowledge that they make a bad choice. They have the opportunity to make a better choice the next time because we know that identity is not fixed. Being anti-racist is about what we do, not who we are. But hold up. I was told that individual choice doesn't matter. Seriously, he's now saying that you can make the choice to be racist.
No one said that this whole time. No one said
but
that
I was
once.
told that I'm not allowed to blame people for their choices or to credit people for their choices. Society made me the way I am, so shut up, Ibram Kendi. Right, seriously, society shaped all of the forces around me.
You can both look at the way that society and systems affect people and also see how they act within those systems. Like it's not, you can think. You have the ability to think. You don't have to look at everything like a light switch or like a black and white photo.
I'm not responsible for my own decisions, except apparently I am. I get to decide whether to pay Ibram Kendi 20 grand a pop. So, good stuff right there. Thank you, Ibram Kendi, for this educational tour through stupidity. That was wonderful. I'm so glad that we read Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram Kendi. If you read this to a child, your child is 7 times stupider and 23,000 times a worse person than if they never read this book. Okay,
What about this book made any child a worse person?
You should not read this book. This is a terrible book.
God.
I've explained to you step by step why this is a terrible book.
Look at him throw it. It's all theatrics. It's all BS, dude. It pains me that people think he's an intellectual. People think him and Tim Pool are intellectuals. Holy crap. He couldn't grasp one concept about that entire thing. And 700,000 people watched this and were like, yeah, you're right. You're right, Ben. You're really owning him. You're really owning the libs right now. This book teaches a child the stupidity of the left in America. Recommended. Anti-Racist Baby becomes non-racist by not reading this book at all. Because everything and everyone in the world is racist. Nobody can be anti-racist unless if you hate everything and everyone. Children are basically... Oh my goodness, dude. And the classic, if you look at racism and try to fix issues based on the races, like if you say, hey, we need to help black people, that is actually racist. Because you are saying they are black people and separating them from white people. Therefore, you are the racist. It's like Tim Pool's argument when California wants to reject or overturn the one Civil Rights Act. provision or whatever that says you cannot focus a policy on a certain race, but they want to reject the civil rights thing because they want to have policies that help black people, but they can't because of the civil rights thing, because it says you cannot focus on one race. It's like, wow, you're the real racist, people on the left. Yeah, Daniel, the right is growing at an alarming rate in the gaming community. I think, it really is because the left is so hard to penetrate. People on the left are so, there is a purity aspect to it. Especially because there's so many loud people on sites like Twitter. If someone says something that's insensitive or messes up, then they're going to have a whole brigade of, anger coming down upon them. There's a lot more, canceling, although that's a stupid term, but there really is a lot more canceling than there is education and teaching and patience. We need to have a lot of patience with people, because a lot of people on the right, as we know, especially, the far right, the people that fall into these positions, they're usually weak people who are dealing with some shit that are taken advantage of. It's like the incel culture. It's all these people who have, really low self-esteem, who are just scared and misled. So I think the left needs to be a lot more patient, a lot more fun, accepting, a lot more, all that good stuff. Everyone knows babies often point out government policy flaws. Yeah, it is hard because grown men don't understand this stuff, so why teach a kid? But who knows? What's up, Cloud, Leia, Daniel, JJ, Erica, CookieBot, David? Yeah, I don't know if anyone saw it, but Trump thought he had a big win in Michigan when a couple of these Republicans held up the certification process in Wayne County, which was needed to make sure or to certify the results for Joe Biden. So the Trump campaign had a nice little press run. They got really happy about it. She went on Fox News.
Across the nation is what it was equivalent to. And it back.
Oh, cool. It muted.
With Michigan, which you munition across the nation is what it was equivalent to. And it backfired. And Sean, I've just got to get to you with Michigan, which you mentioned there as you came to me. I held up these papers, these affidavits, 234 pages of sworn affidavits under penalty of perjury. These
by the way,
from
Kayleigh,
one county.
What did CNN say about when you held them up on this program? Didn't they accuse you of holding up blank sheets?
That's right. They did about a 10-minute monologue saying these were blank. They're not blank. In fact, these pages of paper from one county were the reason that you had a county-level Wayne County canvasser say we cannot certify this election because of these witnesses. They're real people. And one reporter tweeted out, this is the first time in my 20-year history I've ever seen something like this, a county commission refuse to certify. It's because for the first time, you have a president fighting for the forgotten men and women in Detroit and Philadelphia.
Uh-oh. At the same time she was saying this, they ended up certifying it. Oh, where's the AP report? Yep, Michigan County reverses course, votes unanimously to certify election results. Whoops. Yeah, that sucks for them. All their cases are getting turned down all over the place. The PA Supreme Court just denied a Trump ruling because Trump is like, there weren't observers watching the ballots being counted. That was all bullshit. The PA Supreme Court, it was a 5-2 ruling. It's scary that two of the judges on the court actually voted in favor of the Trump campaign, but they're being shot down in PA. No one's taking this seriously. The only lawyers who are actually operating on behalf of the Trump campaign at this point is freaking Rudy Giuliani. Are you kidding me? Rudy Giuliani is your go-to now? All of Trump's lawyers are either quitting or they're extremely demotivated. There's going to be a big temper tantrum from Donald Trump, and it's going to be hilarious. This entire election coup thing is totally fizzling out. We're going to see the final cries of a narcissist, and then he's going to, morph into a different role, which is going to be antagonistic from the outside from this point forward. And he's going to start his media organization. He's going to be a big presence in this thing for a long time. And I'll tell you what, if Democrats don't do the shit right in the next 4 years, or progressives don't gain power in the Democratic Party, but we still have this lingering populism on the right, this far-right populism, fascism, if we still have this in place and Democrats don't get their job done, we're screwed, honestly. Because it works. Their political plan works. And when we have Joe Biden doing shit like this, where, you know, Biden's first climate appointment is one of the Democratic Party's top recipients of fossil fuel industry money, who has repeatedly voted with Republicans against Democratic environmental legislation and for bills to help oil and gas companies. First appointment. Now, this doesn't say what the policy is going to be, but it's not a good start. During his 10 years in Congress, Richmond has received roughly $341,000 from donors in the oil and gas industry, the fifth highest total among House Democrats, according to previous reporting by Sludge. This includes corporate political action, so PACs, donations, $50,000 from Entergy, so gas companies and Chevron and ExxonMobil and Phillips and Valero. Yeah, so this Richmond guy was representing a congressional district that is home to 7 out of the 10 most air-polluted census tracts in the country. He has repeatedly broken with his party. So Biden appointed a guy who has repeatedly broken with the Democratic Party to side with Republicans on major climate and environmental votes. So Biden chose this guy to lead the climate portion of his administration. He's in Louisiana, so, I mean, of course it'll help him politically, locally there. Voted against Democratic legislation to place pollution limits on fracking. He voted for GOP legislation to limit the Obama administration's authority to more stringently regulate the practice. Yeah, so Democrats, if they don't freaking get their shit together, we're having a big fascist movement in 2024. Like with the Electoral College, we're already seeing such big, drain from blue areas or from red areas to blue areas. All Democratic voters are concentrating in one area, which is not good in, cities in, California and stuff like that. It's going to keep on happening unless if we find a way to bypass the Electoral College, which, I mean, it might happen through that one compact the states are signing with each other that they'll vote in accordance with the national popular vote. But, I mean, we have a tyranny by the minority right now. And the minority is a very powerful and loud and active base of white people who are very scared about their heritage and their country being stolen by people on the left, brown people, black and brown people, and I guess anti-Christians. They're really scared about that. These people aren't leaving. Donald Trump just got 72, 73 million votes, which is more than a previous presidential candidate ever got. Of course, Joe Biden is 6 million above that, which is, I guess, good for this election. But these people are not leaving, and if the Democrats don't get their shit together, we're done. Honestly, this country is going to be screwed. I'm going to do my best to move out of America if the Democrats don't get their shit together in the next 4 years. But yeah. What's going on? What's the best way for you to get donations and stuff? Oh, thank you, Leia. If you really want to do that, yeah, I guess like Patreon is the best way. I don't have any donations set up. I need to do that. Super Chat takes more money than Patreon, like out of the donation. But thank you for even considering doing that. But there's Super Chat and Patreon as of right now. Yeah, all I have is the Super Chats, but yeah. So what else was I gonna look at? Oh yeah, the Charlie Kirk thing was so funny. I love this. God. Don't I just love seeing this every year? So every single year around Thanksgiving, around Christmas, around all of the holidays, the conservative right freaks out. And of course, it's going to be worse this year. Not only because Donald Trump just had a blowout loss to Joe Biden, of all people, but also because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So local, state, and, local and state officials, and also now national officials, I guess you could say, because of the president-elect, they're urging people not to gather in big groups for the holidays. Because, one Thanksgiving dinner probably isn't worth killing grandma or like, sending your entire family into extreme medical debt. But every year they freak out about some type of cultural issue surrounding Thanksgiving, surrounding Christmas. Oh my gosh, Starbucks, they say happy holidays on their cups now. They don't say Merry Christmas anymore. How dare you? I'm going to freak out now and be a SJW. They're right-wing SJWs on these issues. And Charlie Kirk is no exception. This is hilarious.
The left has always hated Thanksgiving.
The left has always hated Thanksgiving.
The left has always hated Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving can be interpreted as a religious holiday if you believe in giving thanks to a creator. But
This can be interpreted as a religious holiday if you believe in giving thanks to a creator. Can they use this excuse for anything? So if I'm against people spitting gum on the sidewalk, can they be like, I'm making a sacrifice to my religious creator? You're discriminating against me? Is this going to be the cop-out now? Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving religious to any of you?
hate Thanksgiving because they believe there is nothing you should be thankful for in America. This is an awful place. It is cancerous, rotten to the core. Tear it all down. Burn it from within.
Okay, the one thing I don't like about Thanksgiving is actually every single year I have some type of rant about this that I say. But right after Thanksgiving, and this is so, it's, I guess you could say it's poetry. Is it poetic justice in America? Right after Thanksgiving, a day dedicated to being thankful for what you have. We literally have a day right after called Black Friday, which is all about being, wanting what you don't have. And Black Friday recently has cut into Thanksgiving. People begin Black Friday shopping on Thanksgiving on that Thursday. Amazing in America. Capitalism has overtaken everything. Christmas shouldn't be a holiday dedicated around buying gifts and, giving companies record profits and looking for deals and being concerned about what you don't have. None of these holidays should be about that, but in America, they're all distorted. Thanksgiving is followed with Black Friday. Christmas is now a big shopping holiday. Like, these are anti-capitalist sentiments in these holidays, and we have completely just ruined them with this idea that the market matters more than humanity. And it's funny to hear him say shit like this, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic right now, when the stakes of not like coming together for Thanksgiving can be like life or death for thousands of people throughout the country. And his influence, because he's pretty popular, right? Of the people watching him doing this can be literally getting people killed, like hundreds of people killed.
Why
due
would
to
you
COVID.
be thankful? Instead, we need a revolution.
True. Maybe.
Remember, as the Students for a Democratic Society radicals once wrote in the 1960s, they said, conflict is the origin of everything. What happens when you're thankful? By definition, you're less likely to be involved and engaged in conflict. Thanksgiving is supposed to de-escalate any sort of pre-existing issues in our country. And now they're using the virus as an excuse for you not to be thankful. We'll be right back.
What is that a picture of?
Now they're using the virus as an excuse for you not to be thankful.
Is that the Bible or something? And yeah, MRX, exactly. The left doesn't hate Thanksgiving. They do. They're skipping over it to go shopping. Like, why is Black Friday right after Thanksgiving? It's amazing. The irony is impeccable. But every year, the same people who say there's SHAW snowflakes on the left that are going to cry about everything, cry about Thanksgiving, cry about Christmas, cry about, you're taking you're taking the Christ out of Christmas, when their literal celebration is just buying a bunch of expensive shit and giving it to people they care about. And giving is good, obviously, but do you guys think Christmas in America is represented as more about giving or more about getting? Because when I talk to people about Christmas, it's more about getting. Like, people are concerned about what they're going to get. I don't hear anybody saying, like, oh, it felt so good to give a gift. I'm sure people do feel that stuff. But when it comes to what is the overarching, like, idea behind it, yeah, like, and I think tradition is good to have for a society. But when it comes to this situation, The idea that you can't leave tradition, like holidays, for anything, even if it means a deadly pandemic, that's scary. That zealotry is really scary. I'm not religious anymore. I was brought up a Christian. I went to a Christian school until like 5th grade as a poor boy because of state subsidies and whatever. But now I'm agnostic theist, which means I'm not agnostic atheist. I don't claim that I know what exists or what doesn't exist. But I also, I just don't know. But I'm more on the side of like, the world is crazy. Something can be real. I guess you could say it's spiritual as well. Really into nature and stuff. I think Buddhism is really cool. Half of your family is fundamentalist. Ugh. Yeah, it's whatever. I want to see how bad of a spike in cases there is over the holidays, because I'm really seeing a lot of cases pop up in my conservative rural area that I live in. It's getting really bad, honestly. Like, it spreads like a wildfire and people just don't understand it until they actually get it. And then they're like, "Oh wow, this is way worse than the flu." I'm like, "Yeah, we've been trying to tell you." Stay mad,
We'll be
Charlie.
right back.
Stay mad. What wrong with he had? Small face. Poor Chuckles. No one tell him that it's not the left's fault. No one wants him at holiday dinners. One of Candace Owens' preferred manly men. Why does he look like he's broadcasting from an Al Qaeda PR cave? Charlie Kirk. Full tilt left this year. I love Thanksgiving. I also love my family. And this November, there is a lot to be grateful for. 306, I definitely... Oh, 306, the electoral college number. I don't need a diapered incel lecturing me about anything. Interesting. Jesus was a liberal. Jesus loves liberals. These are facts. Jesus woke up one day and said... Well, actually, yeah. Jesus, if you don't know this, Jesus was actually really influenced by Karl Marx on his come up. It's a little known fact. Conservatives try to claim their religious high ground but fail in their actions. Yep, Jesus absolutely loves liberals. Not sure if he hates conservatives, but no doubt. Okay, well, Jesus doesn't hate anyone, right? Come on. Leia's giving virtual hugs. Jesus was an anarcho-Bidenist. Yeah, that was really interesting too. Something they forget. When Jesus was in the manger with Mary and Joseph, Joseph was actually Joe Biden. But the media doesn't want to tell the secret. Doesn't want to tell the truth, I mean. They are telling a secret. Or not. They're not telling the secret, they're keeping a secret. That was actually Joseph R. Biden. The North Star that all the wise men followed was actually a flare sent up by the U.S. military. And people just don't want to confront this American fact of American history. The wise man was Corn Pop. Corn Pop brought gifts to the baby Jesus from Joe Biden's loins. Yeah, the Mother Mary was actually Joe Biden. People just don't talk about this. It's really disgusting, honestly. It gets me so mad. I wake up every morning and just start doing freaking... Like, I have these, what are they called? They really get your grip strength up. Those things you squeeze, Those workout things you squeeze. I get up and I just do that. I get so mad when I realize the media doesn't tell about this historical truth. Joshua, but yes, Biden is... Yes, thank you. Biden is the father of Christ. God, finally I have people who understand. What else is there? What do I have written in this title? Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro. Oh, Jimmy Dore versus Ro Khanna. I could look at that. Yosef. Joshua. Love it. Alright, let me find this video of the doorman. Here he is. Alright, so this is Ro Khanna confronted over vote to transfer wealth upward during pandemic. Terrible misrepresentation of what actually happened. And Jimmy Dore doesn't really understand what the CARES Act actually did. I don't like the CARES Act, but it wasn't a giveaway of an upward transfer of wealth. It wasn't simply that. Around 1/4 went to the wealthy and powerful corporations. 1/4 went to local and state governments. 1/4 went to healthcare services, and 1/4 went to the stimulus checks. So this isn't even true. And blaming one congressman on this vote, on this entire policy, is, just another testament to how badly Jimmy Dore doesn't understand politics.
Special guest at the top of the show. I'm always happy when our next guest makes time for our show. He's a congressman from
Jacobin,
California's 17th district. He's one of the strongest progressive voices in the Congress. He has bravely led the campaign
Or
through
Jacobin,
Congress
is it?
to end our military involvement with Saudi Arabia's genocide in Yemen. And he is one of the few Congress members who has the guts to come on this show. So let's welcome
That is true.
Representative Ro Khanna. Hi, Ro. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jimmy. I think that's the highlight of the show, right? It's downhill from here.
It sure is. So your legislation with Bernie to end our involvement in the Yemen genocide was passed in the House and the Senate, but was vetoed by President Trump. Now, I presume you'll be reintroducing that
Sad.
bill in the upcoming session. Do you foresee it going through a Democratic Congress when they know there isn't a Republican president to veto it?
It needs to go through. I mean, President-elect Biden has committed to signing it. We need to do this in the first 10 days. I mean, Jimmy, putting aside any humor or comedy, this is the most serious humanitarian catastrophe.
I'm going to agree with Jimmy Dore a lot in this first half here because he is focusing on the issue of war and showing a clear case of hypocrisy of the Democrats that sells well to people, to voters. It plays well with getting voters' attention and getting them to be on your side. But the second half, when Jimmy Dore just says Ro Khanna voted for an upward transfer of wealth through the CARES Act, I mean, he's just doing his typical thing.
In the world, the UN has said within a few months there's going to be a famine there. They need the blockade, the Saudi blockade lifted. We're still providing spare parts to the Saudis. We're still providing arms to the Saudis. We're still
put a
providing
video on
logistics
Discord
to the Saudis. We need to stop all of that. We need to demand that the Saudis and, frankly, the United States ought to be getting $2 billion into Yemen, or you're going to have one of the worst famines in human history.
So why can you just explain what is the government's official rationale behind participating in Saudi Arabia's genocide in Yemen?
There is none. I mean, the official. I mean, it's wrong, but their claim is that it's a dispute and that the Houthis are to blame as well, and that the Houthis are being funded by Iran, and that this is a proxy war with Iran. Now, the Houthis are not blameless. I mean, no one should think that the Houthis are somehow angels, but the reality is that if the United States were to stop our support of the Saudis, we would put so much pressure to get to a peace. And that's what Martin Griffiths wants to do. So our policy has been dictated as a counter check to Iran. And that's why this has been going on as long as it has.
Okay. But just for people playing at home, if you don't know why we're always in bed with Saudi Arabia militaristically, it's because of the petrodollar. And Saudi Arabia was certainly seeing how far the United States would go to support them when they started doing this genocide.
They'll go to any
Yemen,
length.
and we're going all the way because of the petrodollar. Okay, and look at my other videos, which will explain what that is. So,
Very true.
Ro, in your opinion, well, so now we have Joe Biden coming into office. What does the future fight for Medicare for all look like? I mean, what challenges and opportunities should progressives prepare themselves for under a Biden presidency?
Well, I believe in Medicare for all, and I think the first step is that we should get a vote on Medicare for all in the House. We ought to have hearings, and we ought to have a vote. I think if you look at the polling, I mean, Fox News poll showed 60-70% of people believe in national government health insurance. I mean, it's something that is popular not only in blue districts, but in red districts. And my view of this Republican-led Senate is we ought to pass a bold, progressive agenda out of the House and send it up to the Senate, and then see what they will pass or what they won't.
Yeah, I would watch the Jacobin videos on stream, but I'm not doing any independent publications anymore after NPR copyright striked me because I don't want to be banned from streaming on YouTube again. That'd be upsetty spaghetti, By the way, you're going to hear this a little bit late, but for whoever was asking about donating or something, I think this is a donation link. I don't know, though. I think this is how it works, but I'll just post it down there.
Best. Realistically, do I think we're going to get the vote in the House? We'll fight for it, but it's going to be an uphill battle. At the very least, we have to extend Medicare. The Unity Commission said extend it to 60. That seems to me at least a first step.
So you kind of alluded to it. The real
that is a first step. So Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan does lower the age slowly. So if Joe Biden did push forward something that would lower the Medicare age to 60 to 55, that would be a good step in the right direction.
To passing Medicare for All would be Nancy Pelosi's failure to even bring it up for debate or vote in the House. So she won't even won't let Medicare get a debate. She's been a hindrance to all progressive policy, and she's going to be running for re-election for House Speaker. The only challenger currently on the horizon to Nancy Pelosi would be Hakeem Jeffries, who is ostensibly even more corporate than Nancy Pelosi is. So will progressives in Congress just shrug their shoulders and put up a challenger to the White House leadership, or no?
Well, she's going to win. I mean, so it would be tilting at windmill. She has support in the caucus. Now she'll be there. As she said, she's going to be there 2 more years, and progressives are working to make sure we have a progressive successor to her. But a challenge to Nancy Pelosi now would actually lead to someone elected who was more conservative. So yes, we disagree on the Medicare for All, and I've been clear about that. We made progress, though not enough progress. We got a hearing in Energy and Commerce. And I don't understand why we can't have a vote on things. I mean, I understand if people vote against it, fine, that's the democratic process. But to me, not having a vote on these policies is not democratic. And I've been very clear about that.
Yeah, and we need a vote on this stuff because we need a clear way to differentiate who's real and who's fake. Because a lot of politicians will come out in support of a policy. But when it comes down to voting on something that has a chance to pass, that's when you need to judge politicians. Because, for example, a lot of people came out for Medicare for All after Bernie Sanders' very popular proposal of it after the 2016 presidential campaign. A lot of people came out for it, but once it became more viable, those same people backed off of it. Because once a policy becomes reality, they can't just support the optics anymore. They can't just feed off the optics anymore. So they back off of that policy once once shit gets real. So we need an actual vote to see where people actually lie.
Shared that view with the speaker. I've shared that view with everyone. I think we ought to have a vote.
And so, to me, the reason why there hasn't been a vote is that the people who pull the strings in the United States government are corporate donors and health insurance, Wall Street, and big pharma, and they can't even that's why Joe Biden was their pick and Kamala Harris is their vice presidential pick, was because they knew they were not even going to give lip service to Medicare for All anymore, right? So that's why Nancy Pelosi won't bring up a vote. What she should have been doing since she took control of the House was passing Medicare for All and making Donald Trump and the Republicans squash it, so then you guys can run on this, right? A thing that's very popular, but the control.
Oh, by the way, big thank you to Leia. I don't think she said anything, or I don't know, said anything in chat recently, but for becoming a Patreon.
Role of the donor
a patron,
class is so
a patron, I think it's called. You'll now see my unreleased music or whatever.
Complete on Nancy Pelosi. She can't even do that. So if it was what came down between Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries, I know you're not going to answer this. Why am I asking? Who would you vote for if it was Nancy Pelosi?
I vote for the Speaker Pelosi, but the Speaker Pelosi, there are areas where she has led.
Oh, and yeah, and also Leia for $75 donation. Thank you. I'm not good at accepting things like gifts, but I really appreciate that, of course. But yeah, I think y'all understand. Money is bigger to people who don't like
effectively, we disagree. I know.
I think you could tell when certain people get donations, they don't give a shit about it. But
I know you're very critical of her. But on issues of expanding child tax credits, on children poverty, on the Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Campaign, she's been effective. The issue, though, on Medicare for All, I completely agree with you. Look, Donald Trump, in his book in 2000, came out for Medicare for All. He basically said the Canadian single-payer system is better than the system
That's
we
very
have.
true. Donald Trump did do that.
This is a popular issue. There were times during the pandemic that Trump was almost hinting, saying he was going to give everyone Medicare because he understood it was a populist sentiment. And there are times that his advisor said that he really feared running against Bernie Sanders because ultimately he knew Bernie Sanders was actually.
God, Jimmy is so happy to be hearing this right now. Look at his face. He looks like a kid who's about. I don't even know what he looks like.
People's lives better.
No, he looks like a parent. He doesn't look like a kid. He looks like a parent, whose kids are finally admitting that they're right. You know, who their kids are admitting that the parent's right.
We had a problem in this campaign because we got unfairly tagged with labels that weren't true, but we didn't have a strong economic message to counter it, to say, actually, here's what we're going to do. We're going to raise your wages to $15 and we're going to give everyone health care. I still believe that having a vote on this, running about it, and making a villain of an obstructionist Senate is not just substantively correct, it's good politics.
100%.
So what leverage
Nancy Pelosi didn't do shit to make the Senate look like the villains throughout this entire COVID-19 pandemic. Are you kidding me? The political capital that the Democrats should have gained throughout this entire pandemic should be immense, but they got nothing out of it because of shitty leadership. Because I don't think they even want to lead. I don't think they want to get anything. The Democrats don't give a shit about political power because they don't give a shit about progress. Like, it's so annoying throughout this entire time. If we had someone like Bernie Sanders or AOC running the show during these trying times of the COVID-19 pandemic, when there's, 20-mile long lines of cars waiting for food and freaking bread lines, when thousands of people are losing their health care because it's tied to their employers, when people don't have health care during a freaking pandemic, when all the money's being transferred to the top 1%, this entire time the Democrats can't muster anything. They can't do shit during this entire time. It's bullshit. Like, it's sad that regular Democrats don't see behind this fog yet. But I guess that's our job in the next 4 years, is to really just pull back the curtain on all this stuff in a very, like I always say, precise and marketable way. And way that could get people on our side. It's annoying that they can't come to it based off of intuition and based off of reality, but, we got to do that hard work. But
do you have, the progressives have in Congress to get Nancy Pelosi to do that thing that seems so obvious to everybody else who isn't bought?
Well, it's not.
Bosch is off now. Matt, I'm actually agreeing with Jimmy Dore right now a little bit. I don't agree with him with what he says at the end here, but when it comes to this issue, 100% he's correct.
Not just look, I get your point about the corporate donors, and there's definitely part of that there because it's not that corporate donors are going to go give money to some campaign. It's not that transparent. It's that they fund the parties, they fund the super PACs, they fund the independent expenditures, and that is a concern. I think having insurance companies put millions of dollars into a Senate race or into a House race or not fund parties, I'm sure that is one of the factors. But it's another factor, which is we have to be bolder in explaining our message. If you could give me two examples. One is on healthcare. They say socialized medicine, and if we just are mealy-mouthed, it's not going to work. What we have to say is, no, look, you get to have your same doctors at hospitals. Now every person's going to be in network.
Yeah, and in my policy class today, a lot of people were talking about universal health care and how it's not getting more public approval and how the parties aren't pushing for it and how things like defund the police start losing favor in the public eye. And they say, oh, it's because of the Republicans. The Republicans are better politicians. When in reality, I think we all know what the truth is. Half of the Democratic Party operates as opposition to progressive policies. The left party is opposing progressive policies. The right party, the Conservative Party, is opposing progressive policies. That's why these things lose favor, because there's no powerful structure fighting for progressive policies other than the people and politicians who are very iconic and influential, like AOC and like Bernie Sanders.
Now, right now, you don't have a choice. There are a lot of doctors that are out of network. Guess what? Under Medicare for All, every single person is going to be in network, and you're not going to pay a dime. no copays, no deductibles, no premiums. And if we don't defend it, if we're just kind of wishy-washy, then we get stuck with the baggage and we don't have an affirmative vision. Same thing with Venezuela, right? I mean, we are so tepid on that. So they say they want Guaido. Well,
Thank you. I'll set up PayPal then. I don't I don't know how. As far as right now, there's Super Chat and Patreon. I don't know.
to say, instead of saying,
Sorry.
we want Guaido too, or some mealy-mouthed answer, we should say you're crazy. What your policy is going to do is actually going to strengthen Maduro. It's going to give Maduro more reason to yell American intervention, and this is exactly the type of mess that's going to make us less safe. People respect conviction, and I think the problem is we are so afraid to be bold in our ideas that it defaults to people then believing the slogans. But that's just my take.
So, okay, here's a question no one else will ask you. So, at the beginning of the pandemic,
getting
the
spicy.
leadership of both parties pushed through the CARES Act, right? So, despite a few pieces of window dressing for regular people, this was the biggest upward transfer of wealth to the 1% in the history of the human race. And all the progressives, including Bernie Sanders and the squad, went along and voted for this. So,
I voted for it. Yeah.
and Pelosi put it to a voice vote.
All right,
to
we got to
protect
talk
everybody
about the
from
CARES
going on
Act.
the record
Let me
for or
find
against.
a good.
So, when history calls upon them to oppose
Let me
oligarchy
find a
and a
good
corrupt system,
article.
what is the point of having elected progressives in power if they just go along and follow orders from their party leadership anyway?
Where is it? God
Oh,
dang
that
it.
was not following orders. It was a tough decision. Look, I grant you that there was too much of an excess giveaway to large corporations.
I had an article that clearly explains where the CARES Act money went, but I cannot find it. By the way, college students like myself got some money from the CARES Act as well. Where the hell is it? Okay, I'm going to let it play until I find
businesses. But remember, it also had a $1,200 check for families. It also had increased funding for small businesses, for restaurants, for people who are hurting. It increased unemployment insurance and gave extra $600 a week plus the unemployment extension. So there were a lot.
Oh yeah, Jay, like, have any of you read the comments underneath my Jimmy Dore videos? It's like the most bad faith strawman criticisms I could ever imagine based on my takes. No one actually confronted my points that I was making.
A lot of things in there that did help working families and small businesses. We can argue whether the balance.
Oh, hey, Sarah. I didn't see her.
No
name there.
or yes, and I think on balance it helped more than it hurt. But that was the rationale.
So we won't argue because.
And I never say Jimmy Dore's wrong about things. Like, his criticisms are correct, but my argument wasn't that he is incorrect about things all the time. It's that he always portrays things in a bad way, and his politics, his approach can never help us.
There's nothing
That's
to
my
argue
argument.
about. You all voted for the largest upward transfer of wealth in the history of human race. Everybody knew it was coming who knew anything, who read not. It's just shock doctrine because this is exactly what they did in 2008. It's exactly what and they did it this time with like in a week and a half. It took them a few months last time, but this time they knew they got it down. They did it right away, and they got all of you to go along with it. And so they used that window dressing, that bullshit $1,200 and the unemployment extension, so you guys could hide behind that. And that was horrible what you did.
But Jimmy, you don't think that made a difference in people's lives? I'm sure you know people who got
Yeah.
$1,200 or the unemployment extension.
So of course, Ro, that's exactly the bullshit line that's why that's in there. So you can come on here and say that while you voted for.
No, there were fundamental things. I just can't find the article, but there were fundamental reasons why it was structured like it was structured
the
at the
largest
bottom.
upward transfer
It
of wealth
wasn't
in
just
the
for
history of the
looks.
human race during a crisis without giving health care to people and using your leverage. That's the only time that the progressives had any leverage, and you totally rolled over for the machine.
Yeah, okay, so so Jimmy's argument right now is that progressives, when the CARES Act was going through, getting passed and being scrutinized, progressives should have held out their political will, which they did. So the unemployment benefits, the $600, was it per week? Extra on top of regular unemployment. The reason that was kept in was because of Bernie Sanders. In the Senate, Bernie Sanders said he was going to vote no and hold up the entire plan if they did not guarantee an increase in unemployment payouts. Bernie Sanders did use his influence. But this is when you have to talk about, okay, what is good for your total political capital? What issues do you stand upon? Do you try to prevent a bill from being passed? And, it's called the CARES Act. It helps people. It gives people direct money, which is a very popular thing. It helps local governments. It helps local schools. It helps local cafeterias. It helps food banks. It helps fund hospitals during the COVID pandemic. Do you stand against that and throw away political influence and political capital in order to try to get Medicare for all? And we all know during a time of crisis, during a time of, radical disenfranchisement and, pain in general, people don't push for radical left policies. People push for good center policies. It's the same concept like if fascism has taken over, people want liberalism back. They aren't going to go to a democratic socialist out of fascism. People just want something. And during these times, if progressives go against this bill, I think it looks very unfavorably for them. And if I could find the freaking makeup of the CARES Act, I can talk about it, but I can't find it. I don't know why I can't find it, but I can't.
I agree with the healthcare point. I do think that that's a fair point, and we tried to fight, but maybe we could have fought in other ways.
Yeah, in other ways, they could have fought in other ways. But in the way Jimmy wants them to do it, they'd literally just be committing political suicide.
But the idea that we had the worst healthcare crisis, certainly in my lifetime, and the logical response would be, okay, let's extend healthcare, and that we have had no extension of healthcare coverage. I mean, other than saying the coronavirus.
Okay, here you go. So how the $2 trillion breaks down. So individuals out of the CARES Act, $560 billion. That was the $1,200 checks. Big corporations got $500 billion. Small businesses got $377 billion. State and local governments got $340 billion. The social safety net got $26 billion bolstering. And public health services got $150 billion. And Jimmy's claim is that this was simply a giveaway to the top 1%. Of course, that was in there as a Trojan horse, but it doesn't tell the whole story. A lot of the money Jimmy Dore is talking about is through quantitative easing and other actions by the Fed. The Fed has to do with monetary policy. When it comes to the legislation of the CARES Act, this is fiscal policy decided upon by the houses. And that's what Ro Khanna was voting on. So Jimmy Dore, in his criticisms of Ro, misses out on these key details. These are important things. So here's the cash payments that happen in the CARES Act. Extra unemployment payments, which Bernie Sanders purposely got achieved. Gig work and freelancers. They typically can't apply for unemployment. They were allowed to apply for unemployment during this time, which was a good thing. Student loan debt was people didn't have to pay for a certain amount of time. People could wait to file certain taxes. Small businesses got emergency grants, forgivable loans, relief for existing loans. Big business, they were banned from buying back stocks. Money was allocated to help airlines stay open. There was some oversight, but the Trump administration never followed through with it, so that's really bad. Government officials were banned from profiting from these big business measures. So this isn't great. It's not great in any way. But saying that it's just a slush fund for billionaires is disingenuous. Public health, $100 billion for hospitals responding to the coronavirus. Community health centers got $1.32 billion in immediate and additional funding. The CDC got $4.3 billion in extra funding. $20 billion for veterans health care. Telehealth, which was a big deal during this time. Medicine and supplies. Child nutrition. Food stamps got a big bolstering. Food banks. Like I said, state and local governments needed big bailouts as well. Overextended resources. The bill helped them as well. So I think we can get we got a clear picture here that Jimmy Dore doesn't really know what he's talking about when it comes to this act. He's looking at it with the typical anti-establishment viewpoint. Like everything is bad if it's not perfect.
Treatment is free. Is a failure. I mean, I will grant you that. I mean, in usually America, when there's crisis, we have response, and I think a logical response would have been healthcare. But when you're saying the greatest upward transfer of wealth, what specifically in the 2 trillion are you pointing to? Are you talking?
Oh yeah, by the way, Leia, if you look at the bottom of my screen, you're gonna see you donating $75 85 times. You did not actually donate it that many times. I do not want you to be I don't know. I don't want you to think that. I don't know why it's showing up 4 times, but yeah, your name is showing up a lot down there.
About the
on the ticker,
the grants that went to the corporations, or what specifically
So
about that package?
Well, basically, the CARES Act. Well, there's the multiplier also on it, which brings it up somewhere closer to $4 or $5 trillion that got funneled upwards.
And I have to update the patrons ticker slide as well with us, Sarah.
Wealthiest 1,000 oligarchs in the country. Basically, that's what happened. So that's what I'm talking about. There's no UBI for the people. There's no job guarantee. There's no health care. But there is $5 trillion that got funneled upward. That's what I'm talking about. What are you talking about?
Well, I think a lot of that was the Fed. A lot of that was not the CARES Act. A lot of the CARES Act was the unemployment insurance, the stimulus, the small businesses. Now, I had a bill, which I imagine you followed, with Tim Ryan, who's by the way in Ohio, in a tough Youngstown district.
It was
that
the
shows
Fed.
you the appeal of this. And we said, let's just give $2,000 a month to every American. And by the way, if you're going to tell Americans you can't work,
Socialists can't make money,
was the right
dummy.
thing to do early on, because we had to.
It's illegal
to make sure that the pandemic didn't spread. But don't you think if you're going to tell people you can't work, that the government has some obligation to pay them so that they can afford to still have rent and afford to still put food on the table? I think that would have been the smartest policy, to do the $2,000 a month. We haven't been able to get a vote on that, but if you were to say to me, is that a better policy? I would say yes.
Yeah, definitely that would be. So just how happy are you that I am the only one who will even attempt to hold your feet to the fire for the CARES Act vote? Aren't you just thrilled that I'm the only one, a pothead jagoff comedian in his garage is the only one who's going to ask you about this?
I'd say, Jimmy, I still believe in the First Amendment. I still believe that the press isn't supposed to be friends with politicians, that you're supposed to ask tough questions.
Jimmy is
I go
the press.
on Fox News. I go on other places. And you know, there was a
Bro
conference
seems like
call
a
that
good guy.
leaked at the House Democrats. And I'd never leak, and I don't think people should be leaking. But it was all woe is me. And I said, look, being a United States congressman is like being in the 0.0000001% of privilege of humanity. You're
True.
in an extraordinary level of privilege. So if you're going to have tough questions from the press, or you're going to have someone say some not nice things about you, deal with it. Get over it. There's real people with real problems. So I think it's great. I mean, the people who were at my team were saying, why are you going on Jimmy Dore? I said, because he's a journalist. He asks tough questions. And if you can't answer it, then you should be in some other line of work.
Okay. I know.
He's someone that I could see running in 2024. I'm not sure if he has that like iconic microphone like rocking persona, but he is really good, Ro Khanna, at delivering it in a very straight way. He serves for the Silicon Valley area, so he doesn't come across as a socialist. He comes across as somebody like sort of like an Andrew Yang type, but more, what's the word?
But you got to be happy at how bad the press is. Anyway, let's move on. How about our one final question? Here's my one final question for you, and thanks for coming on. But let me.
Yeah, the open Senate seat. I saw Kyle Kalinske made a video about that. Veronica.
I have 2 questions before I get to my final one.
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom is putting someone
leverage?
on.
So now going forward, it's just, Joe Biden's just stocking his cabinet with Republicans and people from the defense, from the military-industrial complex, and now his new chief of staff is a lobbyist. So what leverage now can Bernie Sanders and the progressives who are elected? What leverage do you have to get anything done for people?
Well, we have leverage. I mean, look, we started with Yemen. I believe that Yemen, Vice President-elect Biden will stop.
That's such
that
a
war.
weird question to ask.
You can have me on in 2 months or 3 months, and we'll see if I'm correct. But I'm pushing, and we disagree with Ron Klain. I mean, Ron Klain, I think, will actually help get us the Yemen War Powers Resolution through. If we get that through, if he stops the war in Yemen, that would be a huge contribution to humanity. Beyond that, though, I think, and I tweeted out today, I mean, the Republicans are saying they want to block Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren from being in the cabinet. First of all, that's absurd because no one can question their qualifications. And in the past, the Senate has always said it's about qualifications, not about ideology, especially when it's fellow senators. But my view is we ought to be pushing to have confrontation, not just say, oh, well, McConnell says it can't be confirmed, so we're not going to do anything. We have to nominate them, force the fight. And I guess what progressives are going to do is we're going to continue to push our values and ask that we take the fight to the Senate. And we're going to continue to push as hard for that as possible. And you see, we're not backing down. I mean, progressives have been defending Black Lives Matter. We've been defending the progressive turnout, and we're not compromising on the agenda.
So there's going to be a lot of evictions coming up and a lot of foreclosures. And the last time we were in a similar economic downturn like this, Joe Biden presided over taking 5.1 million families out of their homes. What can progressives do to protect people from Joe Biden?
Well, we need to protect people from eviction, and the eviction is something that would be dealt with in a stimulus package. I mean, we ought to have assistance for making rent payments. We ought to make sure that there's a national moratorium on evictions, and we ought to do that. I will say this, Jimmy, certainly in my life, I mean, there are things I've done and supported that I don't support, and where I made mistakes.
Jay just said true uwu. That's something.
Mistakes, and I guess my test of President-elect Biden is what is he going to support going forward, and I'm hopeful, given the overwhelming results of the public that want some very simple things: healthcare, education funding, making sure that we.
Okay, I want to get to this Ben Shapiro thing, but yeah, even if you're having a discussion on something, the difference between a discussion and a debate, I guess, is the hostility of it. You know what I mean? Like, a discussion turns into a debate once people start getting passionate and really going into the issues. And I think that happens most of the time when you're debating people, especially on something like YouTube with people watching. Because when people are watching, then you want to make a point and look good in front of people. That's why, like, Vosh and Destiny start screaming and all that stuff. They're really focused on how people are perceiving it outside. And Vosh talks about that a lot. Like, the way he presents himself is like he's imagining he's watching himself, and like what can he say to make the people watching think he is correct? It doesn't matter who is correct. It matters who sounds correct in most instances. And it does help to be correct because then, you know, there's a better chance you sound correct. But rhetorical fashion matters a lot. Let's see. Ben Shapiro. Gotta love him. All right. Here's why Candace Owens and I trended on Twitter yesterday. Ben Shapiro.
Okay, so a couple of obvious stipulations up front. Men have always done cross-dressing. There have always been some segment of men who cross-dress. Very often it was played for comedy. And the entire premise of Some Like It Hot is that it is funny when men cross-dress. That is not what the Harry Styles photo shoot is about, right? There have been pop stars who have done this before. David Bowie wearing a dress. They always look like idiots, by the way. You always look ridiculous. But the whole point is to be transgressive. Right, but what we are seeing with the Vogue article is not just an attempt to be transgressive, obviously. It's an attempt to redefine masculinity itself. I mean, this is overt in the article. I'm not making it up. I already read you the segments from it.
Coming from the guy who always wears that silly hat. I don't even know why.
The Vogue magazine article. Okay, so my friend Candace Owens tweets out, quote, "There is no society that can survive without strong men. The East knows this. In the West, the steady feminization of our men, at the same time that Marxism is being taught to our children, is not a coincidence. It is an outright attack. Bring back manly men."
Bring back manly men. And I want your guys' opinion on something. So Hassan, you guys might have seen, made a post about him and Ben Shapiro. I could probably find it really quick on Twitter. Basically saying, like, okay, if Hassan could be considered a man at the same time when Ben Shapiro is considered a man, then it's clear that the gender roles are very, you know, wide encompassing and, you know, they're pretty much bullshit. And there's these pictures being shared around everywhere. A real comparison between Ben Shapiro and Hassan. Guess which one wants to restore masculinity? Now, some people had a problem with this for obvious reasons, but I don't have a problem with it because it's saying, I guess that's how you look at it. So it's good to say, like, people are accepted for, like, you know, Ben Shapiro's accepted into being a man because he wants to be a man, although he's very short, can't grow facial hair, he was an opera boy, all things that are not considered by himself to be very masculine. And then Hassan is very tall, model, buff, can grow a beard, obviously, going bald. He is considered what is very masculine, and they could both be considered men because they want to be considered men. So I don't have a problem with getting the point across this way. I think it's actually kind of funny, and it throws it back into Ben Shapiro's face, because I think it's kind of silly where, you know, the people who are like, we need more masculine men, are the same people like crying that Christmas is being stolen, and also wearing a mask is oppression, and also like all the shit they complain about, really. But
Okay. I'm not sure
his
what
name
exactly is
is
controversial
Hassan.
about this, that masculinity.
Yeah, it works on normies. That's really the point I want to get across. Things that work on normies are typically pretty good to do, just because it's about the outcome, right?
Good and important thing when channeled properly. It requires men to defend family. It requires men to provide. It requires men to channel their aggressive instincts towards defense of
Their
values and
aggressive
civilization.
instincts over defense of values and civilizations. Oh.
Men to provide. It requires men to channel their aggressive instincts towards defense of values and civilization. It requires assertiveness. Aristotle talks about masculinity in exactly these sorts of terms. Harvey Mansfield has an excellent book called Manliness, all about masculinity and what distinguishes it from femininity. Now, it's not that the left doesn't acknowledge these are qualities. The left fully acknowledges the qualities of masculinity and femininity, right? Which is why they suggest that there are a wide variety of genders, because they suggest that a man can be very feminine, and this actually makes him a woman, right? So they agree.
No, okay, if a man is very feminine, it doesn't mean he's a woman. It means he's a man who is displaying what society considers to be feminine characteristics. If a girl is typical what they would consider a tomboy, that doesn't mean she identifies as an actual boy, or that she is seen as a boy. That's what?
This means that there is such a thing as masculinity and femininity. They then just suggest that men should act like women, right? That masculinity should be made more feminine. And Candace disagrees.
No, acting like women doesn't even exist. Wearing a dress doesn't mean you're acting like a woman.
She says that when you make men more feminine, when you suggest that men need to be like women, they need to wear dresses, right? That this undermines some fundamentally...
No one said men need to wear dresses. Like, he always displays all of this culture war stuff as, like, supremely authoritarian doctrine set by the far left Marxist or something.
Good thing about men. In the same way that if you said that women ought to act like men, it's funny, if you say that women ought to act more like men, this is considered sexist, because it actually is sexist. But if you say that men ought to act more like women, this is considered progressive and forward thinking. The attempt to feminize men is ongoing on the left.
What did he just say?
This prompted me to defend Candace's comments. And I said, this is perfectly obvious. Anyone who pretends it is not a referendum on masculinity for men to don floofy dresses and then be celebrated by magazines like Vogue is gaslighting you. Masculinity and femininity are categories. They exist. Right? Some behavior is more masculine, like punching people in the face. Some behavior
is that
more feminine,
masculine?
like wearing floofy dresses. Right? There are many different forms of masculinity and femininity.
Do you know how much of a weak person you are if your biggest concern is like how others are perceiving you? Like, he's talking about Harry Styles wearing a dress as if Harry Styles is being like a girly guy or something. But in reality, if your measurements of like how tough people are is like wearing a mask or something, like the people who say like, oh, I don't want to be seen wearing a mask because then people will think I'm a baby. How much of a freaking baby do you have to be to care that much about others' opinions that you won't wear a mask during a pandemic? Like, how much of a little baby, a little crybaby boy do you have to be to care about something like that? And like, if you wear a dress, the confidence to do that, regardless of how society is going to look at you, is true alpha shit, you know? Ben Shapiro is a beta.
The most important form of femininity is bearing and rearing
beta,
children.
as
that
Jesse
is something
Lee
that is endemic biologically
Peterson would say.
to female mammals of all species, is bearing and rearing their young, right? And it is endemic for men and males of all mammalian species to be more aggressive, right? These are just biological realities. To pretend that they are social constructs entirely is completely idiotic and anti-scientific and anti-evidentiary. Masculinity and femininity do exist. And not only that, how does this tie into the whole dress conversation? Outward indicators of masculinity and femininity exist in nearly every human culture, right? We train little boys to be masculine and we train little girls to be more feminine.
Yes, we train males to be a certain gender role and we train females to be a certain gender role. We train that. It's not real. It's not biologically inherent that you're going to be like that. We train people to fit those roles.
Try to breed out of them the toxicity of masculinity or the toxicity of femininity. We try to use civilization to civilize children. But boys are boys and girls are girls, right? And these are important things.
Nope.
Boys ought to be allowed to act
But he's
like
so close. He's so close to the truth, you know?
boys. Girls ought to be allowed to act like girls. Boys are taught
Why? Okay, so girls should be allowed to act like girls, but girls should not be allowed to act like boys. Boys should not be allowed to act like girls, whatever that means.
to be more masculine in virtually every human culture. This is not a Western-centered thing. Boys are taught to be more masculine in virtually every human culture because the role of men is not, in fact, always the same as the role of women. There can be crossover. Men and women can do very many of the same jobs. But to suggest
Sure.
that men and women are identical and they are widgets created by social conditioning is just bullcrap. It is not true. It is not scientific.
And saying that men and women are all the same based on their assigned gender role is bullshit.
Scientifically true. It is a violation of actual scientific biology. There are differences between men and
Oh my god, the biology understander. You know, the old, I read my biology textbook in 5th grade, so now I understand. I understand it all.
women on the broad range. That does not mean that there's not, again, men who act more like women or women who act more like men. They're not more effeminate.
One of the most common combos that people
Really, YouTube will let ads on this shit, but all my videos get demonetized. Are you kidding me? Come on, YouTube.
Or masculine women, right? All of that exists. But the fact that there is a spectrum of human biology does not mean there are not poles. There are indeed poles, right? As in P-O-L-E-S, there are poles, masculine and feminine. The left knows this. In fact, the point of the Harry Styles photo shoot is to violate those poles, right? Is to feminize masculinity. Olivia Wilde says it herself. The idea is to rethink masculinity as femininity, to feminize men, to get rid of toxic masculinity by suggesting that men should act like women. Otherwise, it would not be headline-worthy for Harry Styles to put on a dress.
No,
If
the
we were
toxic masculinity part is being pissed off when a guy decides to wear a dress. It has nothing to do with men acting like women. It's about you getting pissed off about it. That's the toxic part.
Just about Harry Styles, again, playing with dress the way he says that it is, then he would have dressed up as a giant baby in a diaper with a pacifier, right? Like, he's not doing that. He's dressing up in a women's gown because he's attempting to make a point, which is that men should be more like women, right? And the left knows this. They know this. They openly say that gender is both important and socially constructed, right? They say that gender is actually inborn, but also socially constructed, right? They want it both ways. They say that gender is a social construction, and that it's that femininity
He's losing
is just
it.
men cramming down the patriarchy.
He doesn't
on women.
understand
But
it.
they will also say that gender, which is the manifestation of
Nope.
biology, right?
Nope.
They don't think so. They think that
No, gender isn't the manifestation of biology.
gender is just your femininity or masculinity.
No,
is
they don't
actually
say that
inborn
either.
And inherent to you.
No,
so they
they
say
don't.
that a man can be a
No,
woman,
no,
even though there's no
no,
biological
no.
underpinning. So gender is real, but also it's socially constructed. It's all self-contradictory.
No,
But
all
let's
of
assume for
what
a
you
second
just said is socially constructed, you dumbass.
the honesty of some folks on the left who at least acknowledge that femininity and masculinity exist. They also have indicators, outward indicators. Dress has been, for virtually all time and in virtually all cultures, an outward indicator, which is why the Bible explicitly says that it is against cross-dressing, for example. Okay, but in virtually every culture, men and women dress differently. This does not mean that all men
Wait, what? What does the Bible say? What? What's a sin? Cross-dressing? What? Who would do that? Who would cross-dress? I don't know.
dress the same, and all women in all cultures dress the same. It means that in every culture, there is a distinction between how men dress and how women dress. The stupidest form of the argument that I saw yesterday online was, well, in Scotland, they wear kilts. That means that a man in America wearing a skirt, a floofy skirt, is the same as a man in
Why
Scotland.
does he like the word floofy so much? What does floofy mean to him? Does floofy have some other connotation?
wearing a kilt? No, because they also distinguish between how men wear clothes and women wear clothes in Scotland, too. It's just that men wear different clothes than men in America. It's the most idiotic thing. People are like, well, yeah, back in Roman times, men wore togas. You
The
understand?
point is, nothing is wrong with Harry Styles wearing a dress. Because, and they're using a point from another country where that country's social standards don't say it's wrong. Look at his face. He looks so look at this pause. Look at this frame right here I paused on. Like
Understand, those were basically just dresses, yes. And women wore a different form of clothing at the time.
yeah, he's literally just advocating for fundamentalism and traditionalism. That's all he's advocating for. Conservatism to a T. Nothing can ever change. We must stay backwards.
Women and men were distinguishable by dress. They have always been distinguishable by dress in virtually every human culture. And noting that men wore floofier stuff in the 16th century in Britain does not change the fact that women wore completely different clothing in the 16th century in Britain.
This is such a stupid and immature and pointless point that he's making. Like, this is really revealing how dumb this argument really is. Like, this point right here.
Right, this is a category error, you morons.
You morons.
To suggest that because men wore something like a kilt in Scotland, that if you transferred over to America would look more
Oh, yeah, good point. He can't say gay or anything, so he says floofy. Okay, I get it.
Feminine. Therefore, a man
sense.
wearing a skirt in America in 2020 is just the same in the male-female paradigm as a man wearing a kilt in Scotland in 1590 is insane and idiotic and ridiculous
It's
on its face.
insane. Like, imagine getting this mad over this issue. It's always the most pointless shit they get mad over. These culture war people. It's never the housing crisis. It's never the economy. It's never the stock market crashing. It's never an upward transfer of wealth to the richest Americans. It's never Americans losing health care. It's these dumbass issues, and they don't even understand their own arguments.
And we all know that. Okay, pretending that men dressing like women is not about feminizing men is ridiculous because they are overtly celebrating the fact that styles is feminizing masculinity. So this is all a big gaslighting effect, right? The left will do this. The left's routine is this. Look how important and magical it is that Harry Styles is wearing a dress. He's subversively undermining masculinity by bringing the effect of femininity to the masculine. And that's real masculinity, isn't a dude wearing a dress. And then people on the right are like, yes, men wearing dresses does undermine masculinity by making it more feminine. And that is a bad thing. And then folks on the left don't respond by saying, well, why is it a bad thing to feminize masculinity? Because then they would lose the argument, because masculinity has very many good things and ought to be upheld. Instead,
did he say one good thing about masculinity? His argument right here literally was because masculinity has, end quote, he said, very many good things.
Instead, what the left does is this weird gaslighting shut up routine where they say, how dare you say that men wearing dresses undermines masculinity? You on the left, you said that wearing a dress undermines masculinity.
He's literally yelling at a scarecrow right now. Like a straw man of enormous propensity.
What the whole point of putting people on the cover of magazines who are men wearing dresses? Okay, so here's the bottom line.
Men can't wear dresses.
Who listen to this sort of stuff and they go, well, why aren't we talking about political races? Why aren't we talking about tax rates? Why aren't we talking about
he's
policy?
Responding to me.
This stuff matters. It matters because these are fundamental ideas to the preservation of a civilization. Boys and girls are different. Boys and girls are different. It is important to inculcate in your children that boys and girls are different. And any parent who fails to inculcate in a boy that manliness is a good thing and that responsible manliness helps build civilization,
He provided no arguments towards his premise at all.
Any parent who does not teach their girls that femininity, meaning
he just showed complete outrage, nothing else, no substance.
The protection of hearth and home.
Other than masculinity is good. Source, trust me, bro. Trust me, it's good.
Masculinity is a good thing. Any person who doesn't teach their girls that is not doing their kid any favors. And they are undermining the civilizational compact between men and women that exists based on biology in virtually every human culture. And the left knows that they can't win this argument because biology cuts directly against them.
You have no argument.
Cuts
biology?
So instead, they just confuse it.
This is what you do. You just say biology, science. You're wrong. You're stupid. The left, biology, science, facts over feelings, baby. That's all you say. Just have no facts, only show feelings, and then accuse the other side of doing that. God, it's so beautiful.
Instead, they just play these stupid semantic little games where they say that masculinity and femininity.
Your entire argument was a semantic game. Holy.
Are interchangeable, and if you say no, they say, "How dare you? How dare you?" It's absurd and it's ridiculous, and we shouldn't be shy about discussing these issues because the left certainly isn't shy.
Create your future.
Did he give one argument? He didn't give. Okay, why is masculinity good? Is it because, like, what has masculinity upheld over society? Over, like, history? And can you use this argument for other things? Like the argument, like, this is how things always were, therefore it can't change. This is how things always were, therefore it's good. We all know where those arguments end up leading.
Discussing these issues, the left will put these in public schools, right? The left will tell your kindergartner that
the left will make sure people in public schools are learning science. Updated science. Not the 5th grade stuff from the 80s, but the real new shit. Gender science. Sociology. Don't let them indoctrinate your kids with ideas and education.
Men wear dresses. And then you'll be explaining to a 5-year-old why real men do not wear dresses. And I don't feel that that is an acceptable ramification of our cultural discussion, is that you're supposed to shut up because it's offensive and rude for you to say that boys and girls are different. But it is inoffensive and groundbreaking to treat as completely without debate that men and women are exactly the same in every respect, except that men suffer from toxic masculinity that must be bred out of them by wearing 17th century floofy dresses on the cover of Vogue. The answer to that is no. And I'm glad all y'all really enjoy your Harry Styles music. And Harry Styles is a free man living in a Western country. And by the way, a West defended by quite masculine men as a general rule.
What?
Okay, that is
defended by quite masculine men as a genuine rule?
Congratulations,
or
Harry
a general
Styles.
rule
You can
or
enjoy
whatever.
His music. I'm not saying don't pick up his CDs. I'm not saying don't listen to his music.
Yeah, he's canceling Harry Styles. This is his disclaimer at the end, because of course the left is who cancels people. But you know, I'm not saying don't pick up his CDs. I'm not saying anything. All I'm saying is Harry Styles is leading to the destruction of Western civilization. But you can still buy his music.
I'm not saying don't watch the movies he's in. All I'm saying is that when you put out there an argument that men ought to act like women and that this is a good thing, you're doing something that undermines and tears at the fabric of not only civilization.
This guy's wife is a doctor. Like, you think they'd let a woman be a doctor in the 50s or 40s without the wars when women had to take over in the States and be nurses? Are you kidding me? Men wouldn't, like, throughout history, men wouldn't let women do that. In the 1900s, are you kidding me? They were second-class citizens. All women would be put underneath masculinity.
But of families, it tears at the fabric of child's rearing.
But
and
that
child raising,
changed
and
because
everybody
progress is
with
good.
half a brain knows this. And don't be silenced by people who just tell you that it's rude to talk about it while simultaneously demanding.
I'll talk about it with anybody. I don't think it's rude to talk about it. I think it's rude to lie about it and gaslight the entire conversation and provide no arguments. I think it's just really dumb. And you know,
you put on the Kramer AIDS ribbon, or they're going to club you about the head for not celebrating.
They're going to club you. It's all this, you know, this they're so drawn into this point that the left somehow, if you don't adopt to these new social norms, the left is going to come up with a baseball bat and swing it at your head and kill you. The left is going to be the one, you know, just hurting you if you do not adopt to the Harry Styles doctrine of wearing dresses as men. Amazing. Bonk. Yeah, the left is just gonna, like, if you're too masculine, the left is literally, not figuratively, the left is literally gonna get a big club and just hit you on the head until you're not masculine anymore, until the masculinity falls out of your ears. That's actually what happens. I've seen it before online. Yeah, no one's forcing him to wear floofy things. This is an authoritarian position. This guy calls himself a freaking libertarian. There's nothing about him that's a libertarian. Nothing about him is a lib. In any capacity. Let's see. Is anything else happening today? Oh. This one's fun too. Oh, someone followed on Twitch. Thanks for the follow. Oh, never mind. No, thank you for the follow. Racism is not funny. Cringe liberal take. Oh, no. This guy's name is If Read This Gay. Yeah, okay. Anyway. Did you know that the left wants to take away your health care by guaranteeing everyone has it?
These are common sense ideas that the majority of the American people support, and we're going to fight to make sure that they're implemented.
I mean, I think a lot of people would see those as far left ideas, almost socialist ideas. I mean, he's a democratic socialist. There's a big difference.
Before Susan Collins, which is probably one of the worst senators in American history, before she speaks, tell me if you agree that her voice is insufferable.
Connect here between your party and his party.
the cadence of her voice.
Absolutely. And I think one of the messages that voters sent was they are rejecting that far-left agenda, which includes packing the Supreme Court, defunding our police officers.
When did someone say packing the Supreme Court is somehow a far-left position? What about just packing the court? Has to do with leftism in general.
And also ending the filibuster, Medicare for all, which would decrease the quality and accessibility of health care.
Medicare for all, by giving everybody single-payer health care, would actually decrease the accessibility of health care. It's a really unknown fact in the civilized world.
In this country,
little known fact.
Many of our rural hospitals to close. Yeah. Those are far left
Okay, so
ideas.
one of the big issues with healthcare in general is there's no incentives in a private market for rural hospitals to stay afloat, and it's hard to keep them funded. To keep these hospitals in areas where they shouldn't be, due to the profit motive, there's no money to be made there. You actually need a government-run system that pays hospitals from the government because, as we all know, the government needs to do things, at the very least, that the free market cannot do. And rural hospitals is one of those things. In Medicare for All, there are provisions to make sure rural hospitals stay in rural areas and are well funded. But of course, she is not trying to actually represent the policies. She said Democrats are trying to defund the police and all that stuff. She's here to be a propagandist. But when we talk about the actual policy, Medicare for All and single-payer healthcare is actually what you need to keep rural hospitals afloat. The opposite of what she's saying.
And I know Bernie sincerely believes in them, but I think it's pretty clear that most of America does not.
How are you going to work with Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, at least he is now, and he hopes he will be after to win even more seats in the Senate in 2022?
How did she win?
And he may not be wanting to compromise on a lot of these things.
Well, I don't think we should compromise on the...
Oh, thanks, Leia, for covering that up, or for clearing that up. So she has some type of, what would that be called? That'd be ableism to make fun of her then. So I'll clip that out of the
left
VOD.
agenda that Bernie and others are pushing. But I do think there are ways to work together on everything from another COVID relief bill to deal with the health and economic consequences of the pandemic, to an infrastructure package, as I just mentioned, and also making the market more competitive for...
The market more competitive? Yeah, okay. How did she win, though? Like, the Democrats really fumbled this election because she is a really bad candidate. She's really wishy-washy on, like, every issue. I just don't get it. She's in Maine, right? Senator Susan Collins, or is it Susan Collins? The liberal and conservative corporatists have rejected Bernie's agenda, but I think a plurality of America has not. Medicare for All does at least have over 50%. Maine has lobster wars. She won on the lobster issues. Well, that guy unfollowed my channel. That's good. Maine and their lobsters. Yeah, Trump was always talking about Maine and their lobster issues. I remember that now. What? One America News is showing this map. So what happened here? What did they flip? Okay, so Trump obviously flipped Nevada, Arizona, PA, Michigan, Georgia. Trump's legal team ran the table apparently. Okay. No, Colorado is light blue still. Oh crap, I didn't even see California. Yeah. President Trump has fired the Homeland Security Officer who said publicly that this election was the most secure election in American history. Yeah, so Trump is cleaning out everyone who isn't a sycophant.
The recent statement by Chris Krebs on the security of the 2020 election was highly inaccurate. Yeah. Wait. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris returns to the Senate floor to cast a vote today. Here, Harris can be seen extending her fist to Lindsey Graham for a bump. Oh, God. That's gross. Like, if Democratic voters don't wake up in 4 years, I'm not kidding. I don't like where things are going. After all of the evidence we have now that this party isn't working for the right people, if Democratic voters vote for another corporatist, not good. Yeah, a bunch of actors. None of this actually matters. They're just playing a game. The only good thing about them is they're going to fight someone like Trump. They're going to fight fascism to keep the game going. Which is, I mean, why we had to vote for Biden, many of us, because we couldn't let the game collapse, because then we would be screwed with it falling, but... Oh yeah, Biden also said he's not going to investigate Trump for his crimes. Cool. Hi, Bingus. That's Canada. Yeah. Oh, cool. Marlon Craft is really good, by the way. He's a white rapper, but he has some really woke stuff that I enjoy. I saw this post last night. Where is it? This is the stuff that hurts the left the most, honestly. This kind of bullshit hurts the left so much. If Eminem is your favorite rapper, you're racist. I don't make the rules. I know two black guys who has Eminem as their favorite rapper, off of like technical and lyrical ability. Does that make them like racist or something? A lot of people that would consider Eminem their favorite rapper, I could say, would be racist, I guess. But just the quality of liking Eminem, like, wouldn't you relate if you're white to rappers who are also white and who are rapping about white issues? Or not white issues, but you know what I mean. Like, Eminem's songs about his weird home life. A lot of black people wouldn't relate to what he rapped about his mom and all that stuff with Eminem's early work. Yeah, the Senate races. All right, there's nothing else to really go over for tonight. I'm probably going to try to do like 10 to 12 at night, or at least like 10:30 to 12. I'm trying to get on a decent sleeping schedule now. During, like before the election, I was staying up until like 5 a.m. every morning and then sleeping until I had a class. But stream time is basically going to start from either 10 to 11 at night and go until either like 12 or 1 a.m., depending on when I start. So just look for me at this time. I'm going to try to go live after like Vosh is live, because I know a lot of people who are also Vosh fans that come in, like Matt and stuff. He said he came from Vosh's stream. So I want to make sure I start the stream at a good time for people to come in when he's done. The Georgia candidate, yeah, the Castro stuff. Thanks for the follow on Twitch, Dan Awakes. Yeah, so basically, after Vosh is done at night, I'll start streaming. And again, shout out to Leia and everyone that became a patron. I'll update the stuff. Sarah too. Feeding the YouTube algorithm. With only 3,000 days to go. If I end up getting enough patrons, it's going to let me not work this summer and just do this 24/7. So I guess that's somewhat of a goal. Xander Hall. Yeah. Yeah, I'll be getting off in a minute. If you guys have anything, remember, I'll put my Discord link down there. If you're not subscribed on YouTube yet, please do so. Let's see. I'm just going to keep on posting this. It's the easiest way for me to update what I'm doing. That's the thing, like, I obviously don't need to make, like, money doing this. I only need to make money to the point where it's, like, a part-time, small, minimum wage job in the summer if I want to do this all the time. I wish I could get really deep into topics. It just really sucks because I have to do, like, stupid... I have, like, a research paper due. It's, like, 12 pages on some obscure topic. And I'm like, why do I have to do this? If I could talk my research papers, I'd be done in like a day. If I could record myself just talking about a topic instead of doing like like a 5,000 word paper, it's so annoying. Stay the course, stay encouraged, keep pushing forward. Don't grow weary. Doing good. We stand together. Bible Gateway passage. Yes, God will use Sydney and Rudy to expose the workers of darkness. Lord, help them. Expose the corruption in our government. Jesus 2020, our only hope. Dictate it and then tweak it on paper. Yeah, I try that sometimes. Like talk to text. That could be a way to do it. God, I just don't like school. I just don't enjoy it. I already took all the classes I want to take, like that I'm interested in. Now I'm taking a bunch of like dumb courses just to get through. Alright, I'll update the patron list then. And also I should have more songs uploaded to there then. Yeah, screw school. Alright. See you guys tomorrow around this time. Or around 10 or 11.